Ben? No car.
Okay, this is the work session of the Marlington Local School District Board of Education, Thursday, November 3rd, at the Administration Offices, 4 p.m. Call the roll, please, Mrs. or Dr. Law.
Mr. Hagan?
Here.
Mrs. Humphries?
Here.
Mrs. Krupko?
Here.
Mr. Ryan?
Here.
Mr. Swift?
Here.
Adopting the meeting agenda, do I have a motion to adopt the agenda as presented?
Second.
Discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Krupko?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mr. Hagan?
Yes.
Mrs. Humphries?
Yes.
Mr. Swift?
Yes.
Passed 5-0.
New business, high school roof session, Mr. Swisher.
Okay, so we have the board meeting next Thursday. Ultimately, the goal is to put phase one of the roof project on there. We've had some discussions about, in the last few weeks, there was an option for looking at solar in addition to, in collaboration with our roofing company we have. So we have Will and Alex here from Amoresco, which was formerly PlugSmart, if that makes sense. And so I'm gonna give them the opportunity to kind of talk through that because, like I said, I'm not the solar person with that. So I figured I'd let them take the floor and talk a little bit about that while they're here.
Appreciate that, and I'll kick it over to Alex here in a minute, but as a lot of you may be aware, the Inflation Reduction Act passed in Congress, and part of that act was a lot of incentives and funding for renewable technologies. Really over the past few years, if you were in the private sector, there's been an investment tax credit for commercial property, office buildings, and so there's been a strategy over the last few years that as you're looking to replace a roof, there's an opportunity if we install a bifacial solar panel, which means it's not just taking light from the top side, but it takes light from the top and the bottom side. If you blend that with a white reflective roof and the sun shines, now your entire roof system becomes part of your solar system, it becomes eligible for that tax credit. So we've been doing that a few years on the commercial side, and with the Inflation Reduction Act, they just converted that tax credit to also be eligible to nonprofits and public sector entities as a rebate or a grant. We'll admit it's obviously very new, so the government has given us enough detail to be dangerous, but they've granted themselves, I think it was 90 days to outline and hash out exactly how it's going to work. At a minimum, it's a 30% grant on the total cost of the solar and the rooftop. And then it has a potential to go up to 50, 60%, and that's the part that they're still hashing out. So what we did is we modeled it based on a bare minimum of the 30% to see what that would look like for your specific application. With that, I'll kind of kick it over to Alex. You have the iPads in front of you to kind of review. And this is a first step. We did a very high level analysis to kind of determine if it was worthwhile pursuing and taking to the next step. So these pricings, I would say, plus or minus 10% kind of gets us in the zip code. And if it's something that's worthwhile pursuing, we can talk about taking next steps.
Yeah, so on the iPad, this one right here, kind of got a table in front of you. I'm going to walk you through kind of our high level pricing. So the first line of this table is the roof by itself, obviously. That's a cost of $974,500. You guys have that all hashed out for phase one. We estimate that to provide about $1,600 worth of savings just from increasing our R value and repairing any leaks in it and things like that. So obviously it's a very high payback. 600 years, really not a payback. The solar by itself, which is the second line, it's a 104 kilowatt array. That cost would be about $400,000. The incentive, so that's the 30% of just the solar is about $120,000. And then we're estimating it's going to generate about $10,000 in savings. And to give you context, the most recent billing data I have for the high school is from 2018. You guys spent about $133,000 in electric. So this is about 8% offset just on phase one of the roof. If you combine them, which is the green on the very bottom, and look at the incentive maximized, so still the same savings, you add those up, it's about $11,000 in savings. The incentive becomes $350,000 instead of $120,000 because now we're taking 30% off of the roof as well and the solar. And like Will said, that we don't know exactly what metrics are going to go into figuring out where you lie between the 30 and 50%, but we're expecting it to be somewhere in the middle. just based on, rumblings and what we've heard. So kind of what that means and how to interpret that is that your solar now becomes 88% discounted and pays itself back in a year, because you're already spending the money on the roof. So now's kind of the best time to do solar if it's something that you guys are interested in. As far as the solar technology itself, the panels, they come with a 30-year warranty, 25 or 30 year. The inverter is the one thing that will go bad before that. That comes with a 10-year warranty, and that's known to need replacing around year 15. That costs, we estimate for this system would be about $10,000. So really just a small fraction of the cost of the whole system, but it is something to keep in mind. What else? Maintenance is pretty low on these. Other than, maybe tightening some bolts here and there, this is gonna be very, kind of just sitting on the roof. You're not gonna have to touch it.
Anyone have any questions or comments?
What is the, okay, so you got a 30-year lifespan on these panels.
Mhm.
It's a warrant, is that a warranty?
Mhm.
So you folks would maintain anything that goes wrong in that first 30 years?
The manufacturer would on that side, as far as like the manufacturer covers that warranty, so if the panel fails, if you're having issues like that with wiring, something like that, they would replace all of that.
Okay, and what's the cost to replace the panel?
I don't have that off the top of my head, but I can do that.
I don't have that off the
Would that cover labor as well, or just the panel?
It depends on the manufacturer. Like I said, the purpose of this was kind of high level, just conceptual. And one of the things we had talked about was, and certainly if this was something you guys wanted to pursue, there's a whole next level of deeper dive. This was really what we did, is we got the roofing costs, looked at Marlington's general area, what kind of sun production are we getting here, what kind of weather data are we getting. We just wanted to kind of put it together to see if it was something that made sense to pursue. So all of those, to your point, yeah, I mean, there are some manufacturers that will build, a lot of them are usually material only. So I guess to your point, if a panel were to fail, what is the electrical cost, or what is the installation cost on that? Fortunately, on a lot of these, I actually was talking even to a solar installer. We do a lot, as Amoresco, we're the largest solar developer in the United States. And a lot of these are almost, you can think of as erector sets and plugging in wires. When you get the racking system, for example, it's essentially just a metal erector set being put up. You lay the panels down on top, and you plug wires together, and then you get the inverters at the end, and that's the other electrical tie-in. So a lot of the heavy trade level is at the electrical side for the inverters and tying back into your panel. As far as the actual modules, the racking system, things like that, it's not exactly as complicated. But we can certainly get that data. I just don't have it off the top of my head right now.
All right, I've got a list of just basic general questions.
Yeah.
And if you can't answer those, then I can get us the information later on, it's fine. So this is set in 3 phases with the replacement of the roof. Can we stop after one phase? Or are the components sized for the whole project
This is
based on the
size.
first phase?
This is only size for phase 1.
So there's separate components for each array of panels, then is that?
Yeah, there's components like the inverter, if it was desired, you plan to do future phases, this is again where that next engineering step would take place. We could size an inverter, that we could buy one inverter, for example, potentially to handle the entire roof, but that would all be details we want to work out with you on the next step, if you decide to pursue it.
Will the panels be on an angle, or are they gonna be flat with the roof? I know you said they were bifacial and designed to pick up the reflection off the roof, but what's the angle that they're gonna be mounted at? Are we gonna have issues with glare, reflections for traffic, sporting events and things like that?
So they'd be south facing, you would want to angle them all south facing. And I give you, there's been a number of white papers written on this, and this even give you background with airports. We always get that question if you install solar panels on an airport, and we've done, I believe, every Marine Corps base around the US to go off grid between solar and battery storage. And there's been a number of white papers written on the glare, the impact, things like that it has, and it certainly didn't impact the airplanes, but I can get that data for you as well. But being south facing,
That way.
okay, I'm completely disagree.
Yeah, I have the picture.
With every fiber of my being, I was ready to point that way and say that is south, but Okay. So yeah, to your point, we'd want to make sure that as they're south facing, since they're potentially, we want to do that analysis to make sure that we're not going to have an issue at the football field because a lot of times when those games are starting, it could be dustage.
The only issue we might have is people driving up Mouline.
Okay. I guess the next question is, so it's gonna be grid tied, it's gonna feed back into the grid.
It's actually going to backfeed your panels. We want to keep it, we don't want to tie the grid, and anytime you design a solar array, you want to size it less than what the building is actually using, and the reason being, the minute you go to the grid, you get paid pennies on the dollar. So it would backfeed into your panel at the high school.
So are we gonna have an array of batteries or anything like that?
No, this particular one was not any battery storage, it was just going to backfeed, and what they do is they do net metering through the utility.
So it is gonna be grid tied then, so then when we're not using, our demand isn't matching what the production panels is, it's gonna feed back and. Do you know how they calculate, is it just minus the generation component, like on our bill, we get billed for, the usage and then transmission and generation? Do we still get charged for transmission of the offset, or is it
Not
just?
the offset, not unless we overproduce, that's when you can kind of get hammered. So it's gonna be, we're gonna be able to offset, to your point, for what you're using, we're gonna be able to offset the full amount. It's just, if we start overproducing, that's where you get paid pennies on the dollar. But you're still gonna have transmission and distribution charges. We can't eliminate those because obviously we're not overproducing for the building, and at night, it's not producing anything, so you're still gonna need to be on the grid. So you still will have a lot of those charges.
Okay, what guarantees are we gonna have as far as the estimated generation, and what would happen if it significantly underperforms?
So we base it on the weather data, and again, this is all high level. I'll admit we have not done deep dive engineering. The problem with, I would say, solar is it's all dependent on the number of sunny days you have in a year, and so it's going to vary up and down each year. So what we traditionally do, I know our engineers will usually use like a rolling average of a couple of years. Obviously, anything is not guaranteed predictability, but I think what we could do is we could even look at a previous 3 to 4 years and give you the low end and the high end based on those years of production. If that would help.
I know you said there was very minimal maintenance. I mean, is there any maintenance schedule, like 10, 15, 25-year marks on?
There's companies that offer maintenance agreements. In the industry, a lot of solar maintenance companies are referred to as window washers. Because ultimately, it really is just tightening down bolts is the heavy part of the maintenance, and there's the inverter that will fail down the road. But a lot of it is not really too bad. Even when it snows, like we did the Scout Park Research Campus solar array at University of Toledo. It snows, once the heat builds up, the snow ends up shearing off of the panels because of the angle that they're at. So really, they're not too bad as far as like compared to like a windmill, where windmill has a lot of regular maintenance intervals, and I think everyone probably hears some horror stories about windmills that shear off, fall off. You have some of those problems. Solar is pretty painless.
And you have or can you get us a breakdown, the efficiency degradation of the panels over their lifespan, like, over so many years it's gonna lose.
Yes, and I think even modeled into this is the Brian use 0.5%.
I don't know the answer to that.
We have that. That is modeled into his paybacks.
Okay.
But I can get you exactly what that data is.
Okay, are there any requirements as far as if there was a panel switched out? Does it have to be someone certified? Does that affect the warranty?
So we only will be purchasing Bloomberg Tier 1 panels, and that's a rate of quality and a warranty backing. So that would be kind of our certification that we're looking at for quality and warranty. That's a good question. I forgot to say that.
Another good question is, what would we be looking at for costs to replace the panels at the end of their lifespan? I mean, I know that's hard to say, what's available, but
30 years out, and depends on really. I'd like to tell you that I could probably give you some kind of predictability. I probably can't. We've seen solar panels, as you can imagine, drop over the past few years as they become more prominent. There's more manufacturers. They're more readily available. Prices keep
energy
dropping.
costs go up.
Yeah, it's kind of economies of scale keep improving, keep dropping, energy costs keep going up. I think with the passage of the IRA, you're also going to start to see even more manufacturers start to get involved. But again, I don't know where that bottom is, I don't know where it would settle in at, plus when you just factor in all the other components cost, I think it'd be almost impossible to get that number.
Will everything need replaced at the end of its lifespan? Are they able to reuse brackets and mounting and all that?
Honestly, depending on the conditions, and again, being 30 years down the road, obviously in this Northeast Ohio in general, we face pretty harsh conditions every winter. So again, I think that's one where I don't know what I could, with all certainty, tell you that you could reuse everything, but it is potentially possible that you could reuse it.
I would think it's likely, like when you replace a rooftop unit, you're reusing the structural or a cooling tower, you know, the steel, it would be the same principle.
I know that this has been something that people pointed out in the past with solar panels. Are they recyclable?
Hmm.
I think so, but I haven't been asked that. We'll find out.
Okay. What would it, let's say in, 15 years, it's not putting out anything and we decide to scrap it.
Mhm.
What would we be looking at for costs to remove everything and return the roof back to, what it was like before the system was installed, or if it had been done without it?
So if you decide to pursue this, really the only added component that we're gonna have to the roof is when they rip off that section, there's these U-anchors that would be mounted directly to the deck. And actually, these are required, these are what make it part of the roof system. Without those, if you just have a ballasted array sitting on top of your roof, the IRS says that is not part of your roof, they're sitting floating on top of it. So really, they're just U-anchors that are bolted down that the roofer then is flashing up against. So those U-anchors, if, let's say you remove the solar panels, you would have those U-anchors will still be sitting there. And I would say just if you ever did redo that section of the roof again, you would just remove them off the deck.
So there's no real issue with, having more probability of having leaks around where those U-anchors are mounted?
So anytime you have a penetration in the roof, there's always, I guess, a risk. That's why we like to do it when they're doing the roof. Because retrofitting it would obviously not be something I don't think it would be viable and feasible. We have had, and the various manufacturers approve the U-anchor systems so that they are approved. It doesn't void the warranty, it doesn't do anything like that. But certainly I will admit, it's a roof, right? And we experience it on our project, as everyone knows, we need the air conditioning. So like I said, anytime there's a penetration, there's always that risk. I can't say definitively that it would not.
Okay. And could you let us know on, these numbers? I know they're based off of, are they calculating in increased costs of energy in the future in this as well? Because that's one
On this
thing that
particular
we
one-
can count on.
This particular one, no. So he's using the simple payback.
So as energy costs increase, this will offset that even more and provide more savings.
Yeah, the payback becomes shorter if you factor in utility costs. And actually, just touching on that, because this one we did a simple payback, which is just what it's cost, what we're saving today versus what you're spending on it. But down in Dayton area, actually, we were just with a client, they have AES down there, and then you got hit with a 30% price increase based on volatility of the market. So I think everyone is kind of seeing what's happening in the market in general with gas prices. But again, it's difficult to predict consistency on that. So for this particular analysis, this was strictly simple payback based on today's dollars.
My last question for everybody.
Oh, yeah,
I
it's a
did
good
some
question.
research, and I saw that there were some companies that were in Ohio installing solar systems that were owned by the companies on the schools, where they were, the school was getting percentage of it, I guess the company was reaping the benefit of the solar panels. But with that setup, there was no cost to the district as far as maintenance and all that company held all that.
Yes.
Can you
We-
elaborate on how that works versus this and what the benefits of this are over
Yeah.
that?
So you can still do that. That's called a PPA, Power Purchase Agreement model. And before the IRA, it was the only way nonprofits in the public sector could get solar, because they would have basically third-party investors come in, buy, own, and operate that solar system. Those third-party investors would get all the tax credits, all those tax deductions. They kind of risk were buying those tax credits, tax deductions, and then they would sell you back the power at kilowatt, for a kilowatt hour basis. That's what we did at University of Toledo. The challenge with that, the only downside of the model is anytime you have investors involved, they have ROI expectations. and they want to get their money back. And so a lot of times, by the time the incentives flow down to the public sector client, there's pennies on the dollar.
Yeah.
The IRA has flipped this. Now, certainly we can always look at PPAs, but anytime it's again, you get that bank money involved, you're talking about the interest rates that they're at nowadays, they're going to be charging a premium.
Yeah, to me, it seemed like this way, there was a higher potential for payback for the school versus that
Yes.
way. But at the same time, there's more risk
Yeah.
as we own the equipment.
Yeah, and it's weird because there's other tax advantages you can do if you're a for-profit. On top of the tax credit, there's also accelerated or the bonus depreciation that they allow on these units. They can almost double actually that bonus amount, but still, even then, by the time it funnels down to the school, it's not as lucrative as what this would be. But it just depends on preference. We do both of those.
All right, well, that's all I have for planning, so.
That's all.
So ultimately, when it says true costs, are we paying out this $397 and then getting a rebate back, or are we going to be getting a grant and actually only paying the $44,000?
So it is, you get it back after it's spent.
You spend it.
And again, I'll admit this,
It's no
the
guarantee
the
that.
Department of Treasury has not officially announced the process yet. So I cannot definitively tell you exactly how it's going to
That's
work.
why it says
I know-
estimate.
Yeah, we've been told that the payments will go out within a year of when they go out, but, so one of the things we've been talking to clients about, there's different short-term financing options if you needed to, but I cannot definitively answer that question right now, because we just haven't provided guidance on exactly what that process is gonna look like.
So we're on the hook for $400,000 until the government saves us.
Correct.
Well, they put a limit, they owe us guidelines within 90 days,
Yeah,
and then
okay.
we're getting really close to that. So we
Okay,
should
So
know
we
really
should have a
soon.
better idea.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and these are all great questions, and I wish I had the answers to them. The idea we had with this is, I think we were out here meeting with Dan and Al, talking about, I think it was some comfort issues, areas like that we were kind of troubleshooting and working through, and they brought up that they were looking at a new roof, and so we said it could be worthwhile exploring it, looking at it, because like we said, timing wise, that if we can marry them together. But yeah, unfortunately, it's kind of almost just a little bit early to give you all the answers to really be able to make a definitive decision, but those answers are coming, so that's why I figured this is something you're considering.
Okay, so what's the lead time on this? When do we have to decide, if we're gonna, vote in November to
Yeah.
put a roof on, how soon will we have the information that we can make this determinant, and by what time do we have to do this by February? Can you guys move as long as we do it by February or March, or what's the time frame look like?
I would say, do you know, when is Tremco planning on doing the work, assuming that they're the ones that win the.
Phase one, there ultimately would be this summer.
Okay, so I would say, we just wanna know before they get, and probably, really, they'd prefer to have at least like a month out from when they get started, because the reality is, if you decide to do this,
Any of the companies
They-
you look at
any-
worldwide, everything is based for the summer.
Yeah.
So
okay, if that's your time frame, then unfortunately, really, the only thing we would need to know is in advance, before they start tearing off the roof, is if they're gonna install those U anchors. That's the part that we can't do after, we definitely don't want to do after the fact and go in and retrofit, tear off the roof, do anything like that. So I would say our deadline, that if you decided you wanted to pursue it, or a decision of go, no go, would be sometime probably April, May-ish.
Does that give us enough time to final engineer, do the next step?
No, I'm saying the
of this?
final go, no go on
Okay,
doing the
okay.
solar.
Cause that's the next
Yeah.
step here.
Yeah, the next step, if we want to final engineer this, we probably want to have that, I guess I'd ask you, Alex, your engineer, and how much time do you think we need to start to finish
I
on this?
think, like 4 to 6 weeks our next step here would be diving deeper. If this is something you guys are like, okay, the high level financials make sense, let's get some more detail on what this array looks like, where the U-bolts go, where the panels go, exactly those kind of details. I'd say we need some time to work on that.
And so like working backwards, I mean, I'd say maybe by March, we want some indication, and hopefully by then we should have the answers we need.
Yes.
I think with more answers, the board can have a better discussion. I mean, obviously, from my standpoint, obviously the U-bolts are concerned. It's a penetration point, as you said. It's hard to say you're gonna have this many penetration points. Obviously, my concern is once they're up, you know, I mean, we're gonna have maintenance on our roof, the difficulty of working around those. When it comes to the mini splits and then working around the panels, and if there's issues with leaks and problems up there, how if they bump something, then what warranties this or that, and then we get into this. Those are the little things that people, I don't think about when you're talking about lining all these things up facing south. So those are some of my reservations from my end for the board. But we gotta look at all the options as best ones for our districts. That's why we want to talk. So.
Yeah, and again, this was kind of just timing wise, you were already looking at it, figured we'd kind of just see what the financials look like, see if it made sense. And ultimately, even if you didn't do it phase one, you decided to do it later, phase two, phase three, whatever, once we get more clarity from this, let's say the government doesn't get us the answers by the end of phase one, it doesn't, exclude you from doing it in future phases, so.
Did we state how many penetrations that the roof's going to have?
Because we haven't done that final engineering.
Yeah, we have to do the next step of engineering to say that. We would obviously, keep that as small as possible, that number.
Yeah, and admittedly, like our high level is, what we try and do with these is just trying to figure, because not all these cash flow. There's a lot of these that we come back and they've got a 20-year payback on a 30-year roof, and when you look at, by the time you get done financing it, you're underwater. It just doesn't make financial sense. So we kind of just do a very high level using cost per square foot metrics from design projects that we've done. And so, like I said, this is not a deep dive, and I certainly won't pretend that it is. It just gets us in the ballpark zip code to see before us, even if we come in and do this, it's going to cost the district time and energy, right? I mean, it's not insignificantly taking, Al taking us up on the roof, evaluating, us spending engineering hours. So before even doing that, we'd like to do this high level and say, is it even plausible or viable as a project? And then if it is, then we'll go make the detailed engineering. But
So if we're moving forward with the contract with Tremco, and this isn't, in their contract, are we gonna have contractual issues since part of the savings here is the roof and the solar? I mean, are we gonna have to redo a contract with them if we move forward with the solar after we approve a contract with them, just in general for the roof?
So Dan asked this exact question, is there going to be any additional roof costs? We actually factor in the additional roof costs based on what it typically costs to put in the U-bolt, the U-anchors across the roof space. So it's already factored in our price. There would be two separate contracts. Obviously, one with Tremco, one with us. I don't see that being an issue. I mean, we work with Garland, Tremco, Duralast.
And we're not gonna run into issues with overages on their part as far as, working around or working with?
We would actually go on after their roof stuff. The only thing they would do is just the U-anchors. So they would do their entire roof, and then just stubbed out of the roof would be the U-anchor bolts. And then we would come in when they're completely done, mount to that roof.
But are they gonna include that in the?
That was my question. I said that's built into their process between the two contractors.
And that's what I was saying, they would need to know, as we were kind of backing into when the decision need to be made, I would say Tremco would want to know 4 to 6 weeks in advance of even getting started, because we'd obviously have to show them, have that spec'd out exactly where all the U-anchors are going to go, as well as how many are going to be.
I guess my question, I call it the staging area, how they staging this, where you're putting these things, if you're gonna do it, how does that affect the weight and things like that? That was kind of my question, but you answered it, or you answered it throughout. So.
Yeah, but we would come in fully, they'd come in, completely do the roof, and then when they were all site done with the roof is when we would come in and install the solar panels.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we understand the incentives, so you got 119,000 on incentives.
So if you did the solar array by itself as a balanced solar array, the solar array by itself only has 119,000 in incentives. If you blend the roof with the solar, the entire cost of the roof now also becomes eligible for the 30%. So the roof alone has no incentive. The solar alone has 119,000, but when you combine them together, you get the full 353,000. And that's what we were saying. If you're doing a roof anyway, it's almost the ideal time, because even when you look at the solar array by itself, we're talking about they don't cash flow. The solar by itself is a 27-year payback, which is obviously not going to pay for itself in the lifespan of that project. So, with financing.
Well, what's our payback, including all the incentives, and what, how many years is that?
So you got what, 11,000 a year in savings, and it's costing you 44,000, so 4 years. And then after that, everything, the next 26 is essentially free electricity.
That's hard to judge, in my opinion, because we have no idea what the power company, is gonna do. That's another question. I spoke to the lawyer and she said, you can't. There's no crystal ball to tell you what the power company's gonna do. They can't, it's impossible. They could take a best guesstimate over a 10-year span of what power companies do, but they can't.
You mean with
You mean the cost?
costs,
Kilowatt hour?
the energy?
Yeah, this is just based on today's kilowatt hour. This is not,
There's always a risk either way.
right.
So with no storage capability, the only benefit we have is when it's a sunny day and school's in session.
Yeah, and that's what this 11,000 was factored into based on historical data, cloud cover. Because the projects we've done, you'd be shocked that even just clouds coming through, obviously not just clouds, just clouds coming through will significantly reduce the production of the panels. But these dollars were factored into the specific zip code.
Well, and I think I want to clarify, so even if school's not in session, let's say you guys have school next Friday on Veterans Day?
Yes.
Okay, well, let's pretend you don't, no, I'm just kidding. On like a holiday, like Christmas break, when no kids are in school, it's called net metering. So we're gonna meter how much you're producing, and at the end of the month or the end of the year, the utility company is gonna credit you back that total. Does that make sense?
The grid's like a battery. But
Yes.
partial battery, because we
Because we
only
have
get
to pay
paid.
for it.
Yeah, but we only get paid for the generation, but then when we use it back, we're paying for
Transmission fee.
transmission and generation, even though.
Yeah.
Ohio's one of the better states. Up in Michigan, they actually cap you on that metering at like 150 kW. So if you have a system that's overproducing, like for a school district, in the summer when there's nobody in the buildings, you're naturally, and that's obviously the highest production.
Right.
You're expecting that you're going to produce. Then when the
Summer
load
is
is
better.
much lower, yeah. Yeah. But yeah, again, it's kind of backwards, and they're working on fixing that in Michigan, but Ohio has true, I mean, that metering they've had set up for like a decade or so, or longer here in Ohio, that's, makes it one of the better states to work with.
It would seem, and I'm trying to understand this, so it would seem, say for the summer when you have 3 months of sunny weather, nobody's here.
Yeah.
So you're generating more than you need. It's going back into the grid.
Yeah, there
And
could,
then-
depending, I mean.
So there's gonna be a lot more going in because there's no demand here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, because you would have a lower load. Now granted, the fact we're only offsetting 8% of the full bill on the high school, I would say, the odds of us actually overproducing, I don't think the bill drops by 90%. In the high schools, usually, I'm sure you got some sports.
We do.
Is that over a year's
Mini
time?
splits are running.
Is that what you're?
Yeah,
Over a year.
Production's like
Yeah.
$130,000 dollars a year, I think, is the annual cost, now it's from 2018, so I'm sure it's.
It might be a little bit
Might
more
be a little
now
bit more
after
now.
the air conditioning project.
It's actually, we were 104,000 last year.
Oh, that's pretty good,
bad.
okay. So the 11,000.
We did lighting too.
LED light.
Yeah,
So,
so
So
almost 10%.
this is just one phase. If we go phase 2 and phase 3, then you're talking, let's say round numbers,
I can
maybe.
show you that actually.
Yeah, and that's where Ohio does that's where the net metering factor. So whatever you overproduce in the summer gets credited or offset from future consumption.
We
Credited
actually,
or offset, which one?
What's that?
Is it credited or offset?
I think it's usually at the end of the year is when they do the true up, I believe.
I think it's different for all the utilities, but
I can't remember exactly what.
probably the end of the year, that's the only way we, Take
The
advantage,
only
yeah.
downside of the net metering is we're getting credited just with the generation component, and then when we're using it, we're paying for the generation and transmission.
And I know when he does these high levels, he factors that in, but again, I would say the deeper dive would spell out exactly what we're going to.
yeah, kind of separate all those.
Yeah.
But the first pass of this, I don't think we knew it was gonna be phased, or it was still a question. So we looked at the full $4.2 million roof and how much you could fit on the whole roof. And that was a 482 kilowatt solar array. So to answer your question, the total generation is 47,000, that's our estimate. So out of that's almost half.
Well, the other problem is phase 2 and phase 3, your estimates, I don't think they're that much.
Okay.
So
They
they're
really-
factoring
they're
in some
expecting-
big
We do
inflation,
not
yeah.
have a exact quote from any of the 4 companies we've had that give us phase 2,
What
phase
was
3.
what was the estimated savings then on that?
47,000.
That was the savings.
Yep, that's the savings, annual.
$470.
Electricity generation. $47,000 in electricity.
Got it, okay.
So if you spent $104,000 last year, that's almost half of the electricity bill for the high school.
Is that
I think the
three-
point
is that
you're
three
making is
phases?
phase
Is that what
one.
we're talking about?
We did.
Three phases.
Yeah, that, your
Phase two,
map
phase
too.
three, we do not have quotes for them, do an
Right.
accurate number, the numbers
Right.
that, they have, which were given to us were, I think, basically a little higher there based on inflation, when you're gonna go, square footage, I mean, similar to what they seem until they do core samples, go into those other portions of that, I
Right.
think you're getting true picture. I think it's probably a little high end.
Be
Based
1.6
on the last
1.7.
year's given us, I wouldn't be surprised if they just erred on the big side of caution. Just to
Right,
make
just to
sure,
be safe,
you know.
that you understand what you're getting into.
What is your knowledge on this, these incentives being available or applicable for how many years? Is it,
The minimum is 5, is what they have from the date that they pass this for the nonprofits, for the public sector. I think it's 10 for the for-profits. For the nonprofit piece of it's 5, so, I mean, the timeline.
so if we took 3 years to do the whole roof, we'd still be okay to,
Yes,
if we were to consider the whole,
yes.
whole package?
Are there any other similar programs for just solar in general, like mounted on the ground solar versus on a roof?
You can, you get the same incentive. The problem is, we've usually been seeing around like 13-year paybacks on the ground mount right now, even with the 30%.
Because you're not getting the discount.
Yeah, you're not getting like the, basically the discount of, that's what we said, you're spending the roof money anyway. It's almost like you're just helping. Now again, it depends. I mean, each area is different, but, we've had a few ground mount that are getting below 10. But even when you're at 13, 14 years, when you start looking at interest rates today, a lot of those are cash flow negative day one. They're hard to make the numbers work because interest rates are up. I think even for public sector, most recent I got from my bank was like 5% over National Forward, yesterday, so I'm sure they're even higher now.
Close to 6 today.
Is it really? Yeah.
Crazy.
Any other questions? Or you-
Yeah, do you guys do any mock-ups as far as what it would look like from ground and from above?
Yeah, we can do that.
So you studied enough of the roof without to know where this could be installed?
Yeah, well, what we did with this was, like I said, the high level analysis, and this is just a Google Earth image. We worked around, obviously, we know that we have the air conditioning units up there, so we gotta work around those, and obviously the other exhaust fans and various obstructions that we have on the roof is what we factored in when designing. But again, that's where that next step is, where we really get into like a detailed layout. I mean, that's where we actually get specs, material lists, have the exact number of U-bolts, where they're gonna be mounted, have drawings done, all that. It's a pretty heavy engineering effort on the next step.
Any other questions for Will or Alex? All right, well, we'll be in touch.
Appreciate everyone's
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
There was the-
Thanks, you're right.
If anything, other questions come up, let us know, and then what we'll do is the questions you had today, that we didn't have an answer for, we'll make sure we get those back to Dan.
I'll take those.
Forgot them.
I'll be in touch.
Yeah.
without it. Yeah. Thanks, Alex.
Yeah, thank you. Nice meeting you.
Thanks, Will. Thank you, everybody, appreciate everybody's time.
Sorry, not this time now.
Walk it out.
The guy got it.
She's got all the 2 backpacks. I'll get the door for it.
Okay, before we adjourn, I put in your packet, obviously, what he showed on the iPad, which is what I shared last board meeting. Obviously, then I also attached for the 5th time, the quotes, all right? So, obviously, I'd like to make, I'd like to put a resolution on come November, because of the timeline of where it is. It gives about enough weeks for them to order materials to start on phase 1.
Okay, which one of these is Tremco?
All right, now Tremco's an overall, Tremco's an overall company, so there isn't Tremco. Tremco's who's gonna warranty, so for example,
Oh, okay, so
Yeah.
you're providing a material. Who's the roofing company?
the roofing company, as you go through there, you got 4 quotes. You have Team Craft is one roofing company, they're in North Ridgefield, right up above Akron. Matter of fact, all these are Ohio-based one way or another, okay? Then you got
Sounds
Mark,
One way or another.
Triangle Roofing, meaning they're all located, they have locations all in Ohio. All right, they can't, I guess I found out that you can't actually, within the bid, the quotes we got, they need to be located in Ohio.
Okay.
All right, so they may have a headquarters, say, somewhere in there, but whatever, but their head, they have their locations in Ohio, so.
Okay.
And you have both, so you have 4 quotes here. I gave you the most recent boat quote because I wanted it updated, as you remember, it did not have the Fort building on it, so I wanted to make sure that we gave you that, which is in there.
This one's been updated?
Yes. As of October 27th, because the one I gave you the first time was October 9th or 1st. So they added the Hort, as you can see on page 3, Josh. At the bottom, Hort, they call it Hort base bid, Hort alternate bid.
It's significantly less than that section 9.
I haven't quite figured out section 9. Take section 9 out of the equation. All right, so all you're really looking at is, for both, would be base bid, base alternate, Hort base, add that with it, you gotta add in the base, you gotta add the Hort to their overall bid. So if you're doing apples to apples based on the other 3, look at the base bid of both is $1,068,000 plus $132,494. So you're looking at, almost 1.2 million for both. Based on what, for the same thing that the other 3, material-wise, spec'd out, samples in there.
Do you have one you recommend, Dan?
I'm leaning, yes, I am planning on using Team Craft.
Okay.
Is gonna be my recommendation come next Thursday. I put a resolution together, at least to allow me to enter into a contract with Team Craft. All 4 of these companies, I brought Alan, if you have any questions, will basically, for the first 2 years cover is the warranty. The warranty with Tremco then comes in for the last 28 years. Because somebody questioned, have we used Tremco before? We have. So the Tremco is the warranty for the current middle school roof. They're the warranty, so they're fine. They keep up with the maintenance, all that. We haven't had any issues with that. The roofing company that put on the middle school roof was a different company. That was like Advance, I think is what it was.
And is there a reason we didn't get a bid from PlugSmart?
No, there was no reason I would doubt.
We went through Plugmore for the energy.
They actually.
They came in and did the LED lights, so that was all part of that
So
roofing package.
when PlugSmart came, you're getting confused. PlugSmart's another thing. So when PlugSmart did the elementaries, and we
Yeah.
talked about that, they actually then just got a bid from Boak.
Oh, okay.
That's
So
all they did. So
who
Boak-
did the elementary
So
school?
Boak did the elementary schools. Okay.
But it was through.
Through PlugSmart. Boak, they just went out and did it that rate through Boak. So,
Okay, I understand.
which is another reason when it was brought up, you want to make sure we get a quote from Boak.
We actually got a quote from PlugSmart in 2019, or 2020, when they gave the quotes on the elementary schools. And I have to say, I'm kind of concerned with pricing still, because I looked at square footage I know that we did different roofs on the elementaries, but we were right around $18 to $20 a square foot on their maximum prices, which they came in under on a couple of those. And what we're looking at from my basic estimates, I don't have the actual square footage of the horticulture building, but I actually rounded up quite a bit, and it's over 50% more what we're looking at per square foot on phase 1 of this roof than.
And here's the thing, I wasn't there in 2019, and I can also tell you, like, when you and I had talked about Boak's, you saw an original quote from Boak that was 1/10 of this cost, and you said, hey, let's look at it. Well, that's because it was, I don't know how you want to say it, they really didn't do, that was an estimate, they just looked at the roof, said, here's an estimate of a roof, without actually doing the samples, got up there, looked at it, found out what actually you have to do in that. Like he said, a deep dive, like as Will says, you know, I can give you an estimate, but you want me to do a deep dive, that cost's gonna change. I mean, I'm looking at 4 quotes from 4 separate companies that have no ties to each other.
Yeah.
And they're all coming in generally.
Well, I'm basing on, the actual quotes they gave us at the time for the grade schools and what it actually came out to be. And, what we got for the high school at that time was significantly lower, and I know there's been inflation, but we're looking at over 50% more per square foot on this than what we spent at the elementary school.
I cannot,
It's
I
the
can
same
only-
materials and the same one.
you know,
Well, no, it's a more expensive one, but even the quotes for the bid alternative that are on this, they're about 15% less. And those are, that bid alternative is similar to the roofs that we put on at the grade schools. But even so, that price,
very high.
So
it'd be over.
just adding this up and looking at team crafts, I mean, we're talking $300,000-$400,000 more with Vogue.
No, it's not so much both. To Josh's thing,
I'm
what he's
talking
saying in
about-
general from
All-
2019,
even the green craft one, what we're looking at.
where we're at now, why is the cost different? And I can't speak to the difference between 3.5 years, 3
You're
years.
saying
difference.
50% more?
Well, it's on the
Why not
calculation
just in
that came out
general,
with
just material costs?
Material costs is
But,
skyrocketing.
and I
Across the
don't,
board.
I don't know if that's the actual
Probably
quote, because I
not.
can't find the difference between as from that board meeting versus what you actually would get, which would be about 40 or 50 pages of all the core samples and that. I don't believe that happened. And if it did, I'd like to see it, because I don't believe it did. I think it was a solid estimate based on what it is, and I know inflation's there, but it'd be
Is it
different
the
if
same,
these quotes.
in your estimation, is it the same?
If I remember
Quality?
correctly,
No, it's based off the cost of team crafts versus what we did there. Obviously, like I said, if you look at Vogue's bid alternative, that would be the same quality as the roofs on the grade schools.
That's,
which is
yeah, that's what I was.
15% less in there, so I'd say if you got Team Craft to bid that, it would be similar to that in price, 15%.
But the base is a better, is the better.
So we asked.
Yeah, but my concern is the bid alternative is still extremely inflated versus what we spent a year ago on 2 of our elementary roofs.
Are they the only ones giving us alternatives?
Well, yeah, Folk did that on their own, we didn't ask for that, that was just something Folk did because they obviously used the TPO membrane on the elementary.
The elementary.
The quotes that we got from Tremco put the quotes together with, through the co-op with these 3 were based on the .00 PVC key membrane. It was just a difference between materials, we asked about the TPO, they had some reservations. Kevin did from the Tremco and the co-op talking to the roofing companies that there are some issues with the TPO in the long-term range between 10 and 15 years with crackage, leakage, things like that could happen, especially in extreme heat and shrinkage. They just not a recommendation that they would use. They prefer. That's why they went with what they did. And obviously we were learning as we go because Al wasn't even part of the original Plug Smart Vogue elementary conversation. This was strictly ran. I don't know how it was ran, to be honest with you. We're still trying to figure that out.
Well, yeah, in your estimation now, compared, when we're talking what's at the elementary buildings compared to this, are the elementary buildings inferior to what we're talking about getting here?
Well, I think that KE stuff, everything that I researched about it, it's a better product than the TPO that's on the elementary school. They've had problems with it, they've changed the formula on the TPO a number of times, but that's not saying that, we're gonna have problems. But,
Well, that's not even my concern,
Your
It's
concern is higher.
15% more for a better product, I understand that, and I don't have a problem with that, but I'm saying that everything is really high, and I'd like to know if that's all due to inflation of the material, and also, does this material go up and down in price, based on inflation, if, a couple years from now?
and I think that's what the, doing the phases, like doing 1, 2, and 3, it could be your phase 2
Be
could be
cheaper.
cheaper. Phase three could be cheaper yet. It's hard to say what the industry and what.
But these quotes are all within
I mean, there.
200,000 of each other, yeah, if that.
We got
It's probably
4
less than that.
quotes here and they're all within,
The highest one's 100.
we're clearly not gonna find it, if we find anybody that's gonna do it cheaper,
I guess
I'd
where
be
I'm at.
afraid to use them.
I mean, I guess where I'm at is.
I'm just trying to address
I can-
Josh's point.
No, Josh is not wrong in what he's saying. My thing is, we're at a phase now where we're either going to move forward this summer or we're gonna wait another year. And in either way, it's completely up to the board how they wanna go like this. And I could go and get 8 more quotes or 10 more quotes. I could.
Well, you got $154,000 between the
So-
highest and lowest.
It's one of those, if these 4 quotes were significantly different between $500,000 and $700,000 difference, I would say then that's the interesting conversation to have. But as close as these 4 quotes are, being 4 separate entities from each other without, I think it's fair to say that for some reason, Josh is right, things have gone up extremely a lot in the last
Dan, this,
year and a half.
this Team Craft quote doesn't actually tell us which material they're using.
Al, we've
It's
already
in
checked.
scope
It's-
for,
it's-
truck products.
we have a much
It's
bigger-
all in
We have a bigger detail.
bonding.
Okay,
It's all the same.
Does it have the square
It's
footage
going
on
to
it as well?
truck
Total
products.
square footage?
Yes.
Providing material.
Yeah, and I'm okay with you going forward with what you want to recommend. I'd like to hear more on the solar side. I think it's an interesting conversation, get more of a deep dive, don't you?
I am hesitant on solar.
Well, that's
I
fine.
mean, I don't like the U-bolts. I agree with Will to a degree, I mean, not that he's selling, but at the same time that the more penetration points inside on a roof causes problems. I know he can't answer how they stage these, what kind of maintenance that's gonna affect when it comes to our other maintenance people that work on these mini splits, that work on the vents or up there, work around, how they're gonna be. And I worry about the fact that when I, spoke to, I was talking about putting this resolution together, we use for construction, we typically use brick and record, so I brought up that we're gonna have this conversation, and they say, the school districts they're working with right now that have solar on them are looking forward to ripping them off 10 years in.
But are they using this program?
No, they have
That's
solar,
different.
there's 10 years in already, so it's an older solar, it's probably a different program, whatever that is, so.
who's that?
But on some of those that I saw where the companies owned the equipment, they were significantly less savings to the school
No,
district.
and all they said was just do your due diligence and ask questions about staging, but pretty much the questions that Josh asked were all pretty legit questions. So it's just what he thinks best for our district in the long run. My major concern is anytime you make entry points into a roof, there's a chance. And the chance goes up over years, and it's not the initial upfront getting it back, or the payoff maybe in 5 years, and then we start, getting money. It's the 10, 15 year, our roofs have to last. We're looking at
Yeah.
we need 30 years out of this roof. We really do.
I'd rather, get information, from roofing experts as far as, the chances of this causing issues for leaking versus, a lawyer's office.
Oh, I agree. And I think going the deep dive, if you guys are good with that, they gave us a lot of wiggle room there by saying March. Before you do that, I was expecting them to say like December. That didn't give us a lot of time.
Well, I think if you look at all 3 phases, I know these are all mission numbers, but that's a significant number. You're looking at almost half your electric bill, and that's just gonna keep going up.
Well, the problem is just, do you want to commit the money? Like he said, it goes up and down. We have not got a true phase 2, phase 3.
Well, I understand, but
quote,
you're looking at true cost 44,000.
Right.
No, the true cost to
That's
us up
phase
front,
Or-
we're on the hook for
understand.
We'll know
400 grand.
better once,
I understand.
once they get, more
You gotta
guidance.
put that up front.
That's my big issue is
Yeah,
we got
absolutely.
400 grand up front saying we'll get it back one day.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
well,
You
it's,
know how I
yeah,
feel
that's
about
true.
that.
Just like everything with the government.
Have you
it's
had any
like
conversations with these roofing companies about, working with the solar program?
I asked Al to reach out, talk to them about that a little bit.
It would be good to have, their
But-
input in there.
it wasn't moving forward too much with that until we had a little bit of discussion. So now as we talk about it, Mark says let's take a little bit deeper dive, we can do that. You know, and I think that's not a problem. I'm not worried about that because they are just tearing off the roof and they would be just installing the bolts before they put the roof back on.
But they might even have experience with
They could.
that, the whole situation and, you know.
Al, is it too early to ask your opinion on this? Do you know enough to say you think it's viable, talk about it more, or are you against it? You know, Dan's making reference to all the maintenance, obstacles.
I'm a little, I don't have enough information yet, because I think as far as the roofing companies, how many penetrations, you know, they're gonna work with the roofing company, we have a 30-year warranty on the roof. If it starts leaking around the penetration, those
They
U
gotta be
bolts,
covered.
is that covered, or are they gonna push that back out
I
onto
imagine it would
the
be.
solar company?
And he
So I
kinda
gotta
said-
find all that out.
Preventative maintenance plans bother me a little bit because I think Josh and I had this discussion. I'm not for giving a company more money to come in and do preventative maintenance.
Yeah.
You know, so like Tremco's coverage, there is no preventive, there's no cost. That's what it is. I mean, they are doing it where some other companies are requiring you to pay $3,000 a year or $5,000 a year to basically do a preventative maintenance
Two
plan.
site visits.
Yes.
But in the fine print, and one of the ones we looked at, I'm not gonna specify because I don't wanna get in trouble, but it said that they will cover what they catch at the site visit under the warranty. If something happens prior to or after the site visit, it's gonna be charged at time and materials. I'm thinking, what, the only benefit is, they have no incentive to find an issue to fix under the warranty during their site
That sounds
visit.
sketchy. Yeah.
Because if
That,
If it comes-
that worries me about the solar
It's
panels,
like-
what he said, is like whoever has the preventative maintenance plan, you know, he said you have to find these companies that are kind of, as he called a window washer.
We have Al up there with a compressed air can,
So,
blowing off each individual solar panel.
Well, there's a lot more information to get, I guess.
But,
than what
I mean,
we're-
realistically, if we would like to move forward, we have the funding to do phase one. I think the roof,
Yeah.
we've made it a priority. I would like just to make a recommendation from Thursday. I'd like to at least give you the ability to start getting in some of those questions. I can get them in, come in, they can meet with you, we can talk about those things and get that moving. I
Dan.
think bringing those in without.
Dan, I'm gonna wanna see the team craft, bid or whatever,
The complete,
Yep.
whatever has this, I wanna see where it says the same .80
Yep, no problem,
key.
no problem.
I wanna see it on there.
You got
Make sure we're buying apples and apples, not apples and pears.
Al has it.
I'll have
that's the high-end one and for the other.
This is from-
Grades trucks.
You guys
Okay,
That's for the.
So all three.
That's what all three of those, really all four
Oh,
companies
this-
bid based on
Different
this.
high school.
Okay,
We're good, we're going to.
we'll adjourn, right?
In phase one, this was for the whole thing.
Not according to Mark.
And based off those preliminary numbers,
I know,
the
right?
whole thing is like 4.2. All three phases.
Okay, we're going to adjourn, okay? Is there a motion?
so moved.
Second. Any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Swift,
Yes.
Mrs. Krupko,
Yes.
Mr. Hagan,
Yes.
Mrs. Humphries,
Yes.
Mr. Ryan,
Yes.
passed 5-0.
Thank you. Thank you, Ben.